Hello students, please subscribe the channel, drop a like, share and comment. This is exercise number 5 and 6 of the Progressive Monthly Magazine, July 2022 on the speed of 100 words per minute. Start. Madam, I will be very brief and I shall not repeat some of the things that have already been stated. I do support the motion moved by the Honorable Friend. As I understand it, the Attorney General, when he gave his evidence or advice to the Joint Parliamentary Committee, based his theme on three essential points. One is that you cannot prove the negative, that the non existence of middlemen or agent or whatever, despite the fact of the payment of rupees 64 crores as a condition precedent to the contract, which he had not actually seen. Therefore, the condition precedent to a contract which he had not examined and which the JPC also had not examined was sufficient ground to say that you can't ask to prove the negative, and thirdly, that condition precedent can also be oral. These were largely the three essential points which raise questions which, I believe, only the Attorney General can answer, because the legal experts and the Treasury benches would suppress their expertise and would rather come out with partisan aspects of that which is unsustainable. The Attorney General spoke of the Evidence Act. I hold the Evidence Act is essentially a procedural act, and a fact finding committee, such as our Joint Parliamentary Committee, was not bound to follow the Evidence Act. There are also exceptions to the Evidence Act, like the principle of the primary burden of proving a fact lying with the party that asserts the existence of a thing. And the best example is a child born out of wedlock that is assumed to be the child of that couple, and whoever says that this child is not my child or is not born out of wedlock has to prove it to be so. Here, the Evidence Act is asking you to prove the negative. The responsibility of proving the negative lies on whoever makes the assertion. Therefore, the Attorney General is wrong. Therefore, it is necessary that the Attorney General be called here. Finally, I believe there are other constitutional requirements which make it necessary. Here is Article 299 of the Constitution of India, because this is related to the Attorney General giving advice that the condition precedent could be oral. It can be oral in respect of non-government contracts only. Finally, under Section 92, in fact, the Evidence Act excludes oral evidence. Sir, now I go to my next point. What is the general tenor of most of the amending bills? Interestingly, after 1956, we had the amending bill of 1969. There were two bills in 1964. The general tenor of the bill was known, whether it was restricting the corporate sector or it was liberal or for that purpose. But This particular bill is a little different in the sense that after the present government came to power, it announced policies which were very liberal to the corporate sector. Liberal does not mean that they can break the laws. Liberal means that the government lays down the framework of the industrial policy, and within the framework of that policy, government wants to give the corporate sector a leeway to operate. But here I find under section 270 or section 372 a whole new definition is given to intercorporate deposits, including deposits within the meaning of loan. Not only creates trouble for the corporate sector, it is violence to the English language. By no stretch of imagination can a deposit be termed a loan. We are making deposits in banks. They cannot be called loans. We are not giving loans under intercorporate deposit. To include it under the term loan is an atrocity, and it will only affect the small and medium entrepreneurs. The bigger companies can get enough loans from companies, from government institutions. In spite of our talk of socialism and decentralization, it is always the bigger companies which get the larger cake out of the government resources, and it is the small and medium people who are hit hard by this provision. While ostensibly it is meant to protect the small man, the people who are really hit by the tenor of this bill are the small and medium entrepreneurs. The MRTP and FERA companies are not affected by this bill at all. I do not suggest that there should be any restriction put on MRTP or FERA companies which are not realistic. What I submit is in the scheme of things, the industrial policy resolution from the time of Jawaharlal Nehru, which government still professes is a relevant document. I feel in terms of fulfilling those objectives, there should be restrictions only on MRTP and FERA companies. Small and medium sized companies should be outside the orbit of most of these restrictions. Only then will the company law be effective. Otherwise, this series of amendments may add to the plethora of amendments that we have been adding from year to year.